Hey guys, Matt at the Basement Studio, and today we are going to talk toms, how you mic them, how you tune them, and how you muffle them for the studio, particularly in your home studio. All right, so toms, let's talk about them. There's three key things we want to hone in on, and that is the tuning of it, the muffling of it, and the mic placement. It's the exact same thing as the snare. It's the same kind of ideology going on here in the studio. We want to control our toms because we're not looking for a lot of excessive ring. We're wanting just that clear fundamental and tone to just punch through and then be gone and just melt into the track, because a lot of times when people just leave them open mic'd with no muffling, loose tunings and things like that, you'll have a lot of notes that start interfering with the bass. You'll hear this weird buffering sound, and it's because they are resonating for too long. And you know, it may be great live, but in the studio, we're trying to control that as much as possible. I like to use 2-ply heads on the toms. On these, I have Evans EC2s. They have a control ring in it, which also helps with some of the overtones. And it's 2-ply on top, 1-ply on bottom. I know it sounds a little counterintuitive, but I like the reso head to be able to move a little more freely and control the actual muffling process up top. And with a 2-ply head, that really helps with that. And then I always do some additional muffling, usually. Sometimes you don't have to, it just depends. And the next thing is how I like to tune these toms. Is there's 3 ways you can go about it. Some people like to tune the bottom head below the top head, and it's usually about a minor third under, and that's what gives you that classic doom, like dip tone to your tom. You can also tune them to around the same pitch, same tension, and that gives you a much more even, consistent note. That's what I like to do. I get the best balance out of that. I get the less interference with that in the track, and I typically have to do with less EQing. That's just what works for me. And then the third is you can tune the bottom head about a minor third above, somewhere in there. That's what a lot of drummers and engineers like to do. And that gives you that, again, that kind of pitch bend sound. And it also usually shortens the decay a little bit further. So if you're going to do anything, I would recommend that in the studio anyways, because you're trying to control that decay as much as you can in the studio, because it's very, especially with bigger floor toms, when you start getting into the 16x16s and 16x18s and really big floor toms, they will ring forever and a day if you don't control it somehow with your tuning and your muffling technique. We're going to talk about mic placement, and I like to do the same approach as I do snares. I like to have them over the rim about 2 inches to get as far away from this outer edge where all the nasty overtones and partials come through. And again, I like to mic it to where it's going to the center of the tom. This is where all the meat and potatoes are for my ear. And again, you avoid the nasty stuff when you point it straight down right here on the edge. And again, with a lot of tom mics, it's very much like snare mics and other drum mics. They're usually hypercardioid or supercardioid patterns, and actually having it 180 to a cymbal, you're actually getting more high frequency bleed in the back, because if you look at the polar patterns and their specifications, some high frequency content starts getting in the back of those kind of microphones. That's part of the trade-off for getting the tighter polar pattern. And usually about 120 to 135 degrees off center of 0 degrees on the polar pattern is where you're going to get the most bleed rejection anyway. So that's about where I have these anyways. Other thing I want to talk about with the microphones is, this is going to be a huge unpopular opinion, but I hate 421s on toms. They're terrible to my ear. You have to EQ the crap out of them. Usually take a ton of 1.5K out of them. They really don't have that great of cymbal bleed rejection with what I've dealt with over the years when I've had tracks come in that were cut on 421s, or if I was working in the studio and all they had were 421s. And it's not that 421's a bad microphone. I like them on certain things. They can sound good on a bass cab. They sound good on steel guitar cabs. They have other functions. It's Sennheiser. They make great stuff. I'm just of the mind, I think they sound terrible on toms. It's just, it is what it is. And so, and a lot of people are stuck on, I got to have 414s, and 414s do sound great on toms, and I do run those sometimes, especially on jazz stuff that's real, sensitive touch or brushes and things like that. But I just try to match what's best to the instrument, because each one, this rack tom, this floor tom, they're each individual instruments that have a different tone. I match up the microphones that fit it best. So I have a different microphone on every tom. That's just what works best for my situation. I get the best tone out of it. They don't have to be matching microphones. So it's really simple. Trial and error, figure out what you like. Take the time to figure out what kind of tuning you like, control the resonance, and you'll have great sounding toms. That's really it at the end of the day.